So basically, when the assault happened, and it was like the worst assault I had in my career, it really scared me. I right then I was like, look, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I can't do this. And that sort of led me to like my boyfriend was like, well, like you always wanted to get your transport truck license. Why don't you just come go get your license and we'll do team driving together and I'll teach you how to drive and we'll just hit the road. And I just basically was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Welcome to Second Act Stories, a podcast that profiles people who have made major life and career changes and are pursuing more rewarding lives in a second act. I'm your host, Scott Merritt.
And I'm Andy Levine, a co-host of the Second Act Stories podcast. Scott, I love this story today. Tell us about Leah Gorham and how you found her.
Sure. Well, Leah has about as 180 a story as you could possibly imagine for a second act. Leah was a nurse, and now she drives a truck. So I found her because there was this avalanche of news coverage about her story when it first happened. It was everywhere. So I said, she's got to be a guest on our show.
And tell us about, this is a little unusual, where she did the interview from.
Sure. So Leah was actually, I believe she was delayed at a freight facility. So I was in the confines of my comfortable studio while she sat in the cab of her truck being interviewed by me.
Well, it's a great story. Let's hear it.
When I was 17, graduating high school, my father became terminally ill with pancreatic cancer. The nurses, there was extramural program nurses that nursed my father at home and allowed him to stay at home while he was convalescing with his terminal illness. And basically that influenced me to be a nurse.
Was it something that you decided to do right after high school? Did you have your sights set on doing that?
Well, right after high school, I just wanted to see the world a bit. And I did move to British Columbia and Alberta. Went and worked at numerous jobs out there, and then eventually wound up coming back, settling in and having a child. And then I went to school. I took electronics. I did a year of that. Wasn't for me. And then I went back and I took my nursing after I had my second child. And I started working at the St. John Regional Hospital in 2006 in February. And I worked there for darn near 16 years. So I just resigned October 27th, 2021.
So what kind of nursing did you do at the hospital?
When I initially started nursing at the hospital, I worked on centralized nursing service. So where they had shortages, I would go. Shortly after that, I went and worked on neurosurgery for 3.5 years. And then I finished out my career on general surgery for 12 years.
Let's look back toward the beginning of your nursing career. What were the biggest challenges you faced as you were getting into it?
Well, my biggest challenges was working really long shifts and having small children. And also, ever since I started the hospital, I found that there was a huge nursing shortage, even when I started all those years ago, that really didn't improve. So I just luckily really love to work and I love to nurse. I really liked the thrill of it. I loved my job and I showed up every day, very, very happy to do my job every day. And I loved all the people I work with and I loved the patients. And I especially loved general surgery. I really felt like it was somewhere where people got better and went home. And that was very fulfilling for me in my nursing career.
You did that for 16 years. And at some point you decided that you were going to leave nursing. What prompted that decision?
So leading up to the pandemic, I already mentioned that we did have some staffing problems. We were always short on a very busy units. I mean, increasing work demand. But when the pandemic came in, there was a lot of other things on our plate, extra duties, certain restrictions that we had, not being able to go on vacation, for example, have time off at times. we didn't have a lot of help. And we were increasingly having a huge patient load. So it felt like every time I got done my shift, it was like, okay, I survived. And so did they. And then basically in August, I was assaulted by a patient at 6 a.m. in the morning on my last of, I did 2 days, 2 nights. I was attacked by a patient, and it was the worst attack of my career. So I was assaulted and strangled. And basically from there on, I just was like, okay, so I think I'm going to try something else.
Is that something that happens commonly with the nurses in a hospital setting?
Yeah, I worked on neurosurgery, and I got beat up a few times there. And that's one of the reasons why I left that unit, and I felt much safer on general surgery. And it just seemed to be assaults and everything seemed to be increasing more and being definitely more common. So basically, when the assault happened, and it was the worst assault I had in my career, it really scared me. I right then I was like, look, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I can't do this. And that sort of led me to, my boyfriend was like, well, you always wanted to get your transport truck license. Why don't you just come go get your license, and we'll do team driving together, and I'll teach you how to drive, and we'll just hit the road. And I just basically was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Would you say that that horrible assault that you went through, was that really just the final straw in a high pressure situation that was further aggravated by COVID and all kinds of crazy restrictions and uh, nurses shortages, and then all of a sudden you have this incredibly stressful other thing that happens, and that was it.
Yeah, it definitely was. I really value myself. I value the work I do, and I have standards. And it just got to the point where this isn't working. I'm not doing this anymore.
When you decided to leave nursing and get your, you said it was a transport truck license, which just for American listeners or U.S. listeners is the equivalent of a CDL license.
Yeah.
So he made the suggestion, hey, why don't you get your license, come on the road with me? At that point, was the decision more about just making a change, or was it about moving into an industry that incidentally also happened to be profoundly affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I guess I make a great essential worker. Him giving me the opportunity definitely influenced me to pursue trucking. I don't think everyone's as lucky as me to have a boyfriend trucker that will allow them, to be trained by them and have their own truck and everything. So I'm really lucky that way. But I had the interest anyways, and honestly, when I picked up the course, I loved it.
What's the most appealing part of driving a truck?
I think the most appealing part for me is to be on the road, to be able to travel. It makes me feel almost a little special that I can go places that other people can't. For me, it's like such a thrill to be able to be in the United States. I've been home working and raising children, and I haven't left the country in 20 years. So just to see the difference, and just to be in traffic and see cities and different places that I've never seen before. There's a few things that are just great advantages to me is I get to be around Roland a lot more, and Roland, he's gone, he could be gone from 7 to 10 days usually, and now him and I are all together. We're always together. At this point in my life, I'm very happy to be with my partner as much as I am. So that's a real
Right.
advantage.
As big as some of the cabs that I've seen are, if you have two people that are cohabitating, it still sounds like it's a pretty tight, confined space. So you really kind of need to get along very well in order to make that work.
Yeah, it's real cozy. We are together a lot, and so far it's been working out good. I've been with him since now, him and I have been going out for over a year now, but I started training with him early December, and then I started working for him in GTL the 1st of January.
So, what is it like having this huge truck at your, in your hands, right? There's so much power and so much torque, and you are rolling down at sometimes 70 or even maybe 80 miles an hour at some point.
Mhm.
What's the feeling of having all that power?
Well, I'll tell you at first, okay, so you have to have a certain amount of confidence because you have to maintain being calm. But every once in a while, it'll flash in your head the realization of this thing is huge. I literally could run over cars with it. If I were to make the wrong turn, what I mean? But you put that in the back of your head and you try to be very professional about it. I feel like I really got to watch people very closely around me. I feel that the lanes are a little smaller around me and definitely like turning and stuff like that. I mean, I've got like 53 feet on the back of me.
When you think about the things that you have to put in the back of your mind while you're operating a vehicle that's moving at a pretty good clip down the highway, and the things that could go wrong, I would. It seems to me that there might actually be some similarities between nursing and driving a truck in the inherent dangers that may be associated if you're not well trained and you're not really focused on doing a great job. Is there any
Yeah.
similarity there in your mind?
Oh, there absolutely is. Like observation is the key. Even like, I don't know, I used to call it like a spidey sense, but you get this feeling and you just have to have an extra look. And I find that you always trust your gut that way. And also, you have to do a lot of documentation, a lot of attention to detail. And it's a good idea to have a good sense of time and space for sure. And with nursing, it's just absolutely pinnacle. Multitasking, I'm with trucking, I'm really taking it step by step. I'm not there, like I can't drive and talk even on the headset. Like I just sort of really need my concentration right now. But
Mhm.
actually, there's huge similarities.
Interesting. You wouldn't think that unless you start delving into the story. Uh, how
Mm.
many people? How many people told you you were crazy?
I I really didn't have anyone. My aunt said I was crazy, and then I sort of explained to her, and she came around pretty quick.
So, pardon this pun, but what are some of the biggest roadblocks you've faced?
Well, I a big roadblock for me was I felt tremendous guilt from leaving work because of short staffing. So I was actually there was a bit of that, like me feeling that I'm making the situation worse. But I really had to just there's a certain point where you just sort of have to look out for yourself or you're not going to be any good to anyone. Another thing was I'm a social creature. My boyfriend is just as chatty as I am, but when it's just him and I in here, it's a whole lot different than the social atmosphere that I had at the hospital. I mean, that's a huge difference. My daughter, she's 18. She's at home, so she's doing a dry run of being on her own right now and maintaining the house. So, I mean, those were all big things, but these
Right.
are all sacrifices, and I really wouldn't have any other way.
There's a relative stability that comes with a job like nursing. You have a family, you have a house, you have all these responsibilities. How do you manage it when you spend so much time away?
So it's been a real challenge, and basically, what's helped me the most is look, my daughter's very responsible, and really I have great neighbors, great family, and good support there. I talk to them all too, like through like Facebook and FaceTime and all that to try to stay with them, feel like I'm connected and everything. So yeah, that was a big thing. But to be honest with you, I don't I don't miss home much. I don't know. This
Uh,
is still such a fun thrill for me, honestly.
Tell me about what part of your new career feeds your soul.
I feel safer in this job. I feel safe on the road. I am really happy about being able to travel. I'm really happy about learning something new and really having to get better and better at it and seeing every day that I get better at something. I'm a spontaneous person and I love being on the road, and a lot of times we have no idea where we're going to go and what's going to happen, and to me I love that.
It's a certain personality type that can thrive in an environment with that kind of spontaneity.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Ye-
is there any part of the decision you made to leave nursing and start driving a truck uh, that you regret at all?
I honestly, I don't regret it at all. And I, I like that the story, my story draws attention to the struggles that nurses do have. And um, basically, I feel a little guilty for being so happy at times because I know those girls are working hard at home, but like I just had to do what was best for me, and I couldn't be happier. Yeah.
What I find most interesting is that you went from one profession that has really struggled through the pandemic to another profession that has really struggled through the pandemic. And look, there's no secret that in the logistics industry, finding enough people to drive trucks has always been a challenge. Then you add the supply chain issues, and it becomes a really interesting cross section of you having a very unique perspective on both parts of two very critical infrastructure issues that the world is facing.
Honestly, like it wasn't in the forefront of my mind at the time, but yeah, and it's funny how things work out for sure. Because I guess I've seen a few comments and they say, yeah, she left a high burnout job for the second biggest burnout job. So yeah, and not to mention, I left a profession that's I would say 98% women dominated to a very male dominated field. I'm looking for joy. I'm looking for happiness in my career, and I believe I found it. So
What advice would you have for anyone who's considering a second act career?
I think that you should jump at it. I mean, I think you should jump right in. And I did a bit of research. Make sure you're going into something that you're going to be successful at. Make sure it's wanted, and make sure that it's going to work with your lifestyle and with your family. Really weigh the pros and cons. And for me, I like to do things that are needed and that you know that I can really add to society.
Leah Gorham's story captured the public's attention in a big way because it's so counterintuitive. What's so compelling to me is how vividly Leah's story paints a picture of the burnout nurses experience, which was only made worse by the arrival of the COVID pandemic. Here are a few thoughts I had after speaking with Leah. 1. Exercising your freedom is a powerful driver for many second act stories. You don't have to look too far to find people who feel trapped by their careers. Moving away from an established career can be a costly endeavor, but breaking free of a career that doesn't give you satisfaction can be a worthwhile trade. Number 2, don't seek job satisfaction, seek life satisfaction. Regardless of whatever formal training you may have, whether it's a nursing degree or a license to drive a tractor trailer, it's critical to recognize what makes you happy. Honoring that will guide the important decisions you make. Number 3, never trade your sanity or your safety for a paycheck. Ever. This is a mantra I've lived by for a long time. I say it a lot to anyone who will listen. No amount of money is worth your mental or physical well-being. Leah finally drew the line when she felt unsafe in nursing, and now she loves her life as a truck driver. Andy and I are always on the lookout for new people to profile on Second Act Stories. If you'd like to suggest a candidate, we'd love to hear from you. Just visit our website at www.secondactstories.org and click on the Nominate a Guest box at the top of the homepage. We hope you'll keep listening. There are more Second Act Stories just around the corner.